My name's Todd Boyd. I'm a research director at ClickZ. So I'm going to look at microeconomics. I think that's more interesting compared to in relation to what Adthena do, I suppose. But I'm happy to talk about macroeconomics any time at all. So humans make 95% of their decisions using mental shortcuts or rules of thumb. These are known as heuristics within behavioral economics. And this helpful little graphic shows someone taking a shortcut while someone else is And the point is, there are trillions of computations in our brains every second, so it's not really worth applying our full mental faculties to every single decision. We look at the evidence around us and we make quick calculations, we take shortcuts. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. This is quite a famous experiment. So people are given $50 each and asked, would you like to keep $30 or gamble the 50? 50-50 chance, you might keep all the money, you might lose it all. Almost 60% of people say keep the $30, which is surprisingly low, actually, when you really think about that one. Then, in the other room, they were given the exact same premise, but the framing was different, and this is known as framing in this environment. And they were said, you've got $50, you didn't have it before you came in, you can either lose $20 or you can gamble the 50. 50-50 chance of keeping it all. And only 39% chose to make what is probably the more sensible decision and lose the $20. It's the exact same thing as keeping the 30, but it's about how it was framed. And this is a phenomenon known as loss aversion. And loss aversion is based on the premise that we conceptualize losses as much greater than gains. So they're actually considered to have double the impact in our minds. We just don't want to lose things. So some might be thinking, what has this got to do with PPC ad copy? Well, actually, quite a lot. So a lot of companies you might have noticed have started where they used to take your credit card details to do a free trial. They've changed that, where they say no credit card details. We won't take anything from you. It's a one-week trial, and then you can make your mind up. And that has doubled the conversion rate for a lot of these companies. And the reason is people don't want to lose something. They've got used to having this product or service, and they consider it theirs. So they're twice as likely to sign up then as they are to cancel if they've already given their credit card details. So framing things simply as you will lose out if you don't do this rather than you will gain by doing it has double the impact, which I found quite surprising. I won't go through every single one of these. This is here to illustrate a point, which is essentially that there are a lot of them. Now, there's over 100 cognitive biases, and these are those kind of mental shortcuts that sometimes lead us to error, sometimes to better decisions. There are over 100 of them. There's a link to them at the end of this presentation, but I guess my point here really is you've only got a couple of hundred characters to make an impression in paid search. So there are over 100 of these, and you could employ a team of behavioral psychologists, but you still won't fit 100 into a couple of hundred characters. You need to decide which ones to go for. And I'm going to talk about three. First of the three I'm going to talk about is incentives. And these are really simple. Everyone knows what an incentive is here. They can fall into two different categories, so it's intrinsic or extrinsic. And I could apply that simply to my daily work. So I go to work because it makes me feel like I'm contributing to society. That's an intrinsic motivation. It's something that comes from within. So I'm passionate about what I do. It allows me to express myself. I enjoy working with my colleagues. Extrinsic could be, I go to work because I need a paycheck and I need to pay my rent. It's really kind of that simple. But overall, the question is, well, what's in it for me? That's what everybody wants to know. How will I look or feel better if I do what you're asking me to do? And I've got two examples here. One is overtly commercial, the other one is, well, much less commercial. But there's a middle ground between the two. So this is a search taken in the US for men's jeans. And we can see, there's quite a lot of things going on about this being the new summer collection, so you might look better by buying these Zara jeans. Stop paying retail markup is what one company leads with, which is going back to that kind of loss aversion idea. Again, you're being taken for a mug. Come with us and we won't do that to you. But what I find really interesting is the one from American Eagle in third position, which is it's the ultimate declaration of personal freedom. So a really, really commercial search, but they're going for this intrinsic motivation. You'll be able to express yourself better if you wear these jeans. And the reason I want to bring this to light here is that's what advertising's always been doing. There's nothing that new about that. You will feel better, they kind of create an image of a projected future self. in which you're a better person. Buy this and that could be you. And you almost envy your future self. The only way you can attain that state is by buying the product that they're offering. Nobody else is offering this to you. And the arena of search has been very much a direct response medium, mainly text ads, but it's starting to move into this space, and search marketers need to be aware of these kinds of things, especially as we move into more kind of multimedia and things like Google Shopping, Pinterest search, Amazon as well. It's not just about bidding the highest and getting in front of people anymore. It's actually about motivating them. First position doesn't mean everything. There are other options there. American Eagle, I don't know what the click-through rates are like for that one, but it's interesting that they're going with kind of an intrinsic incentive for what is just a pair of jeans. Now, if we look at something like charity donation, I find this one really interesting because you would think that that's quite a philanthropic thing to do. It's quite magnanimous. People want to donate to charity. Yes, help end childhood cancer, that's probably something we'd all like to do, so that's a motivator. But they also not only say that it's 100% tax deductible, but they let you know what the code is as well, so you can get this straight into your tax return. So they really do know that there's a push and pull going on here. There are two different things going on. People are very complex, they're motivated by different things, and even a charity donation can pull on both intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. So I thought that was quite an interesting one, because something like UNICEF, yes, very powerful messages, you would think that would be enough on its own, but it's actually not. The second thing is herding. I suppose this is kind of self-explanatory at a conceptual level. Compulsory picture of penguins for any one of my presentations, essentially, but they serve a purpose beyond amusement. These penguins are in Antarctica, and they're in the middle of the food chain. So, of course, I didn't learn this from anywhere other than it was in a book about behavioral economics, so I'm not going to pretend I know a lot about penguins. These penguins are in the middle of the food chain, and they need to decide whether to go into the water or not. So they could go into the water and get a lot of krill, and then they'd be very happy, or they could go in and they could meet some seals, and they could be hacked to bits. So what essentially happens is that I don't know how they decide this, actually, it's maybe an interesting study. They let a couple of penguins go in, and they see what happens to them. So, and the outcome, obviously, is it's going to have a pretty clear connection to what people do next, or penguins in this instance. If they go in and they're fine, and they come out and they've got a lot of krill, they all dive in. But where this applies to PPC ad copy is that we kind of do the same thing when we're shopping, because everyone's advertising at us. They're all saying this is the best. American Eagle is telling me that a pair of their jeans is a choice of personal freedom. Other people are telling me I can end cancer if I give my money there. Where should I be? I mean, probably cancer rather than the jeans, to be fair. But there are a lot of decisions going on, and we're thinking, are we going to get good value? Are these people trying to trick me? We want, much like our penguin friends here, other people to take the plunge and report back to base. We don't want to be the first ones to go in. We want other people to do the hard work for us and then let us know, was this worthwhile, was it not? The application of that, I think, is quite simple. In paid search, we might think, but what I find really interesting within this, so I was no longer in Brooklyn when I took this screenshot, I was in Boston, and looking for Red Sox tickets, and what I actually find interesting is the equivalence nowadays that is drawn between the consumer ratings and a quite reputable publication like the Washington Post. So 95% of people now say that they would equate the importance of a 5-star rating on Google to a personal recommendation from a friend, which sounds a bit crazy, but it's to do with the quantity. So they were asked if there were more than 1,000 good reviews for this, would you equate that to a friend saying something's good? And that's what a lot of these ads are doing. So they are showing the star ratings that are coming through, becoming a little bit more difficult now, I know. And they're also putting in quotes from the Washington Post, but the two are seen as kind of the same. So people do want to follow each other. They do want to know, have a lot of my fellow people, have they dived in and come back with krill, or have they not? And we're also looking to see what the news publications are saying as well. But the two are actually coming closer and closer together, and there's more research going on into that. The opinions of fellow consumers are just as important as anything else. So it's a concept known as herding, and it's quite easy to apply. The third one is availability. So the availability bias is one of the biggest ones that really comes out quite a lot in terms of framing how people think about things. So if people were asked, if I ask you, does the average German car cost over or under $100,000? People say under, and say, okay, now name a brand of German car, and they'll say Mercedes or BMW. If the question is framed as, do German cars cost over or under $20,000? People say, well, over. Okay, name a car brand, and the most popular response then is Volkswagen. Because it just anchors people, it gets them thinking in a certain way. And it's the same idea as in a salary negotiation. Whoever goes in first, statistically, has a much better chance of getting what they want, because they frame the whole conversation. As long as it's not like, £10 billion or something. But, and the availability bias, it's just based on the psychological phenomenon known as primacy and recency. So we recall the information we hear first and last, but rarely the information in between. So yeah, get ready for my big finish. It's going to be something spectacular to take away with you. And I actually found this really useful to look at something like Sprint. So there are loads of examples of this where it's quite obvious what's going on. But what Sprint is really trying to do, so it's a cell phone carrier in the US, and I just type in Sprint, and this is in kind of incognito mode. I don't really know if I'm a customer or not. What they're trying to do is facilitate the switch. So Switch and Save today, it makes it very clear that it's going to be a limited time offer, so there's the scarcity idea that you'll miss out if you don't come with us now. And something that people find really difficult, like switching cell phone carrier, they just try and make it as easy as possible. So they get in with two different ads, they take up the space, they're the first and last thing you see above the fold. They've taken up all of that real estate. But they're also making it really clear that you can both buy a phone and you can switch cell phone carrier as easily as possible. And as we move into one-click shopping and shopping actions via voice search, everything that can be seamless just tends to, when we think back to the graphic of the person just taking a shortcut, that's what happens with payments. The easier it is, the more likely we are to get the result that we want. So, yeah, takeaways, much bigger than the summary. I'm going to go back to, I mentioned this one at the beginning, and I haven't highlighted everything that's going on within this screenshot just because, it would get crazy. Looking at flower delivery Brooklyn, we've got things like joyful bouquet, so there's an intrinsic incentive there. This is how this bouquet will make you or a loved one feel. And if we look at flower delivery Brooklyn, which is obviously a great domain name to match that search, they're in first position, same day local flower delivery, and they're at the bottom and they're in via the maps. Now there's a lot of strategic work that we can do to take up those two positions and just bookend what people see, because a lot of people will look past the first ad, they go to second and third, but then we see flower delivery Brooklyn again. It's also showing me how close it is to where I am. It's making it easy for me. So there's much better chance, and I think that is who I ended up going with. But we have other people saying extrinsic incentives, like this is a premium thing. So the person you give it to might think better of you for giving you this. Scarcity is a huge one. The sale ends in 32 minutes. Buy it right now or else you might miss this amazing flower deal. And we have things like CBS News saying it's the best value florist. Everyone is competing. It's really hard to know without seeing the data which of these is the most successful. But whether people know this inherently or whether they've studied these things, they are using all of these techniques to try and get someone's attention. And it's something that we should all be very much aware of. My takeaways are more questions to ask. I've been sort of railing against takeaways recently because, they're kind of, well, it can be a little bit reductive. I think there are some questions that we should be asking though, because the more that we understand the people at the other end of the search, the better the connection we can make between us and them. The more we understand ourselves, the better we can bridge that gap, obviously. So what are those kind of pain points that we can resolve for customers? How can we make the journey as seamless as possible? So across devices, of course, making it easy to transact and to log back in. And which biases are at play? I've included that list of over 100 at the end of this. No need to read all of those, but it is worth knowing a few of these. Some people call them tricks, but they're known mainly as nudges. How can we just nudge people in the right direction? So how can we also work with other departments? I think the kind of digital industry, what I've been seeing in my new role anyway, is that it's really maturing, but also at the same time incorporating elements that have always been around in advertising. So how do we make those emotional connections? How do we use the right imagery, the right visuals? And those are things that brand advertisers have been thinking about for a long time. So what is our brand identity and how can we get that through? And I think that is essentially it. Thank you.